All right, so what we're going to look at here is the quick fix that we're going to put in the chapel when the sound system is down, but we still want to be able to have audio for the Sunday services. Now, with this particular device, this is going to be very simple. Most of the function that you're going to need to do is just on and off, but I'm going to walk you through some of the other settings in case you get stranded. So keep in mind, this first part of the video is just for the member use, so they know how to interface with this temporary fix to get their sound system up and running. Once I get done with that instruction, you can go ahead and pop off. The second half of this instruction will be for the installer to give them an idea of what they're looking at if they're installing it for the first time. So primarily when you see this device, it may be beneath the podium in the little cabinet, or it may be just off to the side. Each situation will be different. You'll notice there'll be a couple of cables plugged in, and this is all simulated, so I get it. These cables don't go anywhere, but that's going to be the image that you're going to see. So simply put, there's an on and off button at the end of the day. If the last unit wants to turn it off to get the mic so it's not hot, go right ahead. All right, that gets the power on, and there's a light that indicates the power is going, so you know the power is on. Now, this microphone needs phantom power. So this is a 48-volt phantom power switch. The switches are off when you see white, and when the white goes away, it is powered. So now you look at the indicator light, it is off, and so is the switch. So we want to make sure this is your first troubleshooting is to make sure that the power button on the back is on and you have light. The next one is this switch, and you have that LED light, and now you know you have power. The only buttons here we're going to fool with is the one here on channel 1. The idea is that the installer will have this set to its best settings, but should something happen, a kid get to the dials or just something strange where you feel like you don't have any other option but to go in here and start spinning dials, I at least want to show you what those dials do so you kind of know where you need to be. This first button should be dead center. It's a pan button. It just moves the sound from left to right. Don't mess with it. You should be pretty good. If we have it in left, it'll all be over to the left. If someone has it plugged in right, it'll be all the way over to the right. So just leave it pointed to whatever space that you have. In this case, it's left, and up here it matches that it's left. If there's a lot of background noise, so let's talk about first the gain. I'm sure you know if I turn the gain all the way up, I'm likely to get a squeal coming from the microphone through the speakers, and it's going to be real loud and obnoxious. So that gain kind of starts to pull back to where we don't have the feedback, and also to a point that we don't hear people shuffling around on the rostrum or in the front pew. That's kind of what that's there for. If there's a lot of background noise, we can use a little bit of this 100 hertz dial. It's the low, and it'll filter some of that out, and even the high. But the more you take down the high, the less it's going to get your actual voice. So try to make those adjustments mostly, keep that centered, and try to make those adjustments between the gain and the low. The channel output is how much you're putting out. We can go ahead and leave that at full blast and set the settings. This is used for if we're mixing it through a couple different channels and we only want partial. So we're not going to worry about these, and we are just going to go ahead and crank that up. And we're going to use this master dial, and the master dial will be the amount of volume that we're sending to the chapel. So, or to the amplifier and chapel speakers. So this, in a sense, can help you regulate how much volume that you need. So when we install it for the first time, we're probably going to install it at full strength. And if for some reason you want to pull that down, if we get a really loud speaker and you just have to change it. But we're going to try to make it where it's just one setting and that's it. Because this isn't going to be near the podium and you're not going to be able to kneel down and turn this on and off. But I want you to know it's there. So if you feel like you have to make an adjustment, you can and turn that down. So there's your knob there. And each installer may install it different. Some may put it in the center and balance everything and then go to the amp and have it cranked up. So it does give you some up and some down, but I'm just going to leave that to the installer who puts the temporary patch in to get it to the optimal settings, knowing that you're not going to be able to turn this up in between speakers. Okay? So that's all that it really is for the user. Remember, if you want to change the volume, this will adjust the volume. If for some reason it's still too loud and this one's turned all the way up, you can turn that one down, which is your channel 1. But these are your primary buttons that you're going to use to adjust the sound, and that's going to be about it. Some of the amplifiers have knobs on the outside of them that you can adjust, so it's possible, not during the meeting, but should you decide that whoever installed it didn't balance it high enough and take into consideration all the people in the room, you could go to the sound closet after some little tests and spin the dial and get as much up as you can, or down, whichever one that the case may be. So that's the end of the user interface, and now we're going to talk about installation. So if you're not interested in installation, you can jump off this video. So we're going to simulate a lot of stuff here. So we're going to talk about the physical connection. So looking at this, we're gonna pretend. Well, this is actually to a microphone here, so I'll bring the microphone in to help with the visual aid. This is going to simulate the current situation that you have in the chapel with the microphone plugged into the XLR input underneath the rostrum. And what we're simply going to do is we're going to disconnect that, and we're going to connect the microphone into the mixer, and then we're going to run a cable from our output and plug it into our wall. There it is. From the microphone to the microphone line in, and then a cord. So you can pick up the small cord. This box here we picked up at Guitar Center. Get this at Guitar Center, and you can also get a small 3-foot or smaller whip, whichever you decide you need, that goes from here and into the sound. Okay, so now we're going to flip over and look at what happens in the back. So this is a view of the back of a typical old mixer, and all of the wires should be labeled, and this one here is labeled pulpit. It might be chapel 1 or pulpit, either one, but typically we see pulpit. Now you have to look around because in this case it's way over here on the right hand side. This may have been because an installer had a problem with one of the other channels, and this is one way to take a mixer that's not working right, it maybe just a single channel is bad, and move it to a separate channel. Most of the time we're going to see, and we'll move over here, most of the time we're going to see that 99% of the time, this first wire here in M1 on the upper left-hand corner, this very first wire in the channel 1 input is going to be your chapel wire. Sometimes this may be a simple trial and error if they're not quite labeled right, because each one of these spaces represents a different microphone, and you're going to have to hunt it down if it's not labeled. But 99% of the time, you're going to find the chapel sitting right here. Easy enough. This is 3 screws, a positive, negative, and a ground wire. And we're going to take that off, and we're going to go up here to the channel 1. Channel 1 is on our amplifier and simply has the same configuration. You see positive, minus, and ground. and you're going to take a small flathead screwdriver and unscrew here at the top, remove those wires, take the wires that you have unscrewed. There's a little flathead screws on the top of each one of these terminals, and you're going to unscrew those, and you're going to put them right there on channel 1. Once you do that, you should have plenty of sound. There you go, channel 1. You should have plenty of sound to get you by. The pulpit, or I'm sorry, the roster and pedestal, the power on and power off button won't work, of course, to turn your microphone on or off or volume up or down. So you will have to do that manually, which we showed at the beginning of the video. And it really is just as simple as that. You need to pick for your space what you think is the best setting. If it's possible for you to take the master switch and connect everything to it, and you're able to use these buttons here to get a good volume, and also the knobs on the front of the amplifier, and you're able to get a good sound in the middle, that's great. That would give the member an opportunity to add more or subtract more. If you're having trouble getting your outputs where they need to be and you just have to have that main cranked all the way up, then you have to have it cranked all the way up. So see what you can do to try to give them that adjustment. So should your best guess, since there's no one in the room, jiggling around and kids moving and talking, should your guess be low, then this will help them out. So remember to, when you're balancing the output amount, make sure to try to give them more than makes sense for while you're there in an empty building. When it's a little bit too loud in an empty building, once people fill up, that typically sounds about right. All right, so that's it. That's a real quick, easy way to insert a mixer in between the chapel microphone and the amplifier and get your sacrament meetings continuing until you have a sound technician come out and replace whatever is broken.